Okay, so what we're going to do now is show you how to cook the perfect steak. We want to start by getting our pan really, really hot, and you want to use an appropriately sized pan for the piece of meat that you're going to cook. So for example, if you were going to cook 4 steaks at once, you'd want a pan that was big enough to hold all 4 of them at the same time. If you're only cooking 1 steak, then you want to use a small pan like this because it's going to help distribute the heat more evenly through the meat. Okay, so we're going to put some oil into the bottom of the pan. We want to use a rice bran oil or a canola oil as opposed to an olive oil, because olive oil has a really low smoke point, therefore it will burn if you're cooking on a really high temperature. We don't want to put too much oil into the pan, so we just put a little bit on the bottom and coat it and wait for it to heat up before we put our steak in there. And then we want to season our steak really well with salt and pepper. Okay, salt helps to bring the flavour out in the meat, so don't be shy with using it. Bit of pepper, and then we pop our steak into the pan, and you want to hear that sizzle. You want it to be really hot, otherwise what will happen is the meat will stew in the pan if you put it in when it's too cold. You want to be really careful not to overcrowd the pan, so you'd probably never want to cook more than maybe 4 steaks at a time. And if you were doing 4, you'd want a really big, heavy based pan that was super, super hot before you put it in. Otherwise the temperature is going to cool, and rather than caramelizing the sugars on the meat, what will happen is it will actually just start to stew and all of those juices will come out. So when your beef is in the pan, you want to just leave it to cook on that side, and we're going to turn it over once. The mistake that a lot of people make is they keep turning the steak over backwards and forwards, and what happens is it actually stresses the meat, so every time you turn it over it's seizing up and you're going to end up with a really tough piece of meat at the end. So you want to brown it really nicely on one side, turn it over, cook it on the other side, and then we're going to get it out of the pan and rest it to let all of those juices reabsorb into the piece of meat so that you end up with a really nice tender and tasty piece of meat. Now a really good way of testing when your steak is done is with the face test. So this is rare, this is medium, and this is well done. Okay, so if you're uncertain how it is, touch the piece of meat before you start cooking it. So obviously that's really rare, and then as it's cooking you can just do the touch test, and sort of the more springy it is, the rarer it's going to be. But what you need to remember is that the meat will actually continue to cook a little bit when it comes out of the pan, so you want to get it out just before it's done to your liking, and it will continue to heat through a little bit more, and then it will be cooked perfectly by the time it's rested. Okay, so just by feeling that, I can tell that the steak is absolutely perfect. It's going to be really good and medium rare. So now we need to take it out of the pan and place it onto a plate where it will just rest and give it a chance for those juices that have gone to the outside of the piece of meat to be reabsorbed back into the middle. So we'll rest that for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll eat it, and it's going to be absolutely perfect.